Good morning, good morning, good morning to our dearest viewers and listeners. You are now watching Talk Takes because our talk will definitely take you to somewhere special. For today's episode, we are going to bring you to the beautiful country of China. We are about to dive in its several dynasties along with the work and achievements that they are best known for. But before anything else, let me first introduce with you our lovely and brilliant discussants and guest speakers for today. First in line is with Miss Desiree Aseldo.
Pleasant morning to everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Second is Miss Sheila Marie Casipe.
Hello, nice meeting you, everyone.
And the third one is Miss Leona Christine De Mata.
Hello, Miss J. Thank you for having me here in your show.
And then the last speaker for today is Miss Angeline Pastoral.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, thank you for that, our guest speakers. And now, without further ado, let us now first call on our first guest speaker, who is Miss Desiree Aseldo. Miss Desiree, what do we need to know about the Song Dynasty?
So let's proceed about Song Dynasty. So Song Dynasty started during the 960s to 1279. It is commonly divided into two Song periods, such as the Bei, meaning north, and Nan, meaning south. As the dynasty was ruled only in South China after 1127. Let's proceed with North first. So as I was saying earlier, this dynasty was discovered by Zhao Guangyin, a military inspector of the Ho. It was divided into two Song periods, as I was telling earlier, such as the Bei and the Nan. So let's proceed to Bei Song period or the North Song period. The Bei Song period was discovered by Zhao Guangyin, the military inspector of the Hu. He used his diplomatic skills to persuade his people or his potential rivals to exchange their power for honors. Then he became an admirable and powerful emperor, which is known as of now the Taizu. He named his temple as Taizu. He followed the Confucian principles and set an administration through instituting a competent and pragmatic civil service. As the times by, the Zhongchen took over the north and established a dynasty and called it as Jin. But they did not succeed to take other regions of Song territory. So let's proceed to non-Song period or the South. This is the non-Song period. So the non-Song period or the non-Song dynasty was started during the 1127 by Gaozong. He picked the capital to be called as Lin'an, but now it is recognized as the Hangzhou. So Gaozong admires the Han Dynasty when it comes to handling civil service and bureaucrats. Under the Genghis Khan attack and call it as on the Jin state during 1211. And by the year 1276, Khan's grandsons advancedly attacked the Song, which finally collapsed the dynasty. It finally ended by the Song fleet destruction near in Guangzhou. And next slide. So here are the works and achievement of Song Dynasty, such as the trade guilds was organized, paper currently increased in use, waterways, and Southeast Coast, widespread of printing of the Confucian classic and movable things, brought literature and learning. So when it comes to learning, so we have primitive academies and state schools graduates cause an increased number of competitors when it comes to civil examination. We also have comprehensive welfare policy which made the dynasty as most human period of the Chinese history. So by the 12th century, Zhu Xi and Lu Jian in Neo-Confucianism was systemized into coherent doctrine. And that is my all, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you so much for that informative discussion, Miss Desiree. So overall, we have learned that here in the Song Dynasty, it was marked by cultural advancement and known for the golden age due to the invention of gunpowder, compass, printing, and usage of paper money. The Song Dynasty was also divided into two, which are the North and the South. Even though the Jongchen tried to take over the North Song Dynasty, they failed to take all of the regions. However, just like other empires, everything comes to an end. Despite of having many achievements of the dynasty, due to the Mongols' attack, the Song Dynasty finally ended. So that's it for the Song Dynasty. And now moving on with several dynasties, let's now move on with the Yuan Dynasty, which will be presented to us by Miss Sheila Marie Casipe. Miss Sheila, what are the vital points that we need to remember whenever we are talking about the Yuan Dynasty?
Okay, good morning, everyone. So, in Yuan Dynasty, it was founded by Kublai Khan. So, Kublai Khan is a leader of the Mongolian Boryan clan of the Yuan Dynasty era, lasted for 1970 years from 1271 to 1368. So, the Yuan Dynasty was the China's first foreign-led dynasty. So, it is in between Chinese Song and Ming dynasties. So, next, please. Okay, so let's now move on to the facts about Yuan dynasty. So the first one is Genghis Khan, so established the Great Mongol Empire in 1206. So the Yuan dynasty was the result of the southward conquests of the Mongol Empire. So as the fifth emperor, um, he complete the conquest of the China, which was started by 1279 up to 1211, and thus he became the first Yuan ruler of the whole China. So Kublai was at the same time the overboard of the rule over dominions, and which included the areas of the diverse, and as of that, the golden hurdle of the southern Russia, or the Ilkhanate of Persia, or the present day, which we call the Iran, and the steep heartlands where Mongol princes were still living the traditional nomadic life. And to govern China with its long and individual political and cultural history demanded statecraft of a special order. Okay, so Kublai Khan, a Genghis Khan grandson, who won a Mongol civil war and moved in China's capital to Dadu, now Beijing, established the Yuan Dynasty. So Mongol Empire founded in Genghis Khan in 1206. So it was originated from the Mongol heartland of the steppe of the Central Asia by the late 13th century, and it spanned from the Pacific Ocean at the east of the Danube River and the shores of the Persian Gulf in the west. So next. Okay, so the famous Italian traveler Marco Polo visited China during the Yuan dynasty and introduced China to Europeans. So another fact is that Kublai's empire was the first to use the paper money as the main currency. And then lastly, okay, so let's now move on to the Mongol Empire foundation of the Yuan dynasty. So as you can see in the picture, that was the Genghis Khan's mausoleum of the Khan's Mausoleum. So in 1206, Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes and established the Mongol Empire. So he began it to conquer the Western Xia, Jin, Liao, and today's we call it Northern China. So with two in the largest west expeditions of by his successor, namely the Mongol Empire. So the Mongol Empire had already occupied the vast watches of the Eurasian continent. So this includes the North China, or the Northeast China, and then Tibet and China's Western region, and the Central Asia, West Asia, and also the Eastern Europe by 1259. Next, please. Okay, so the next one is the establishment of Yuan Dynasty. So as you can see in the picture, that was the Yuan Dynasty came from Mongolia. So in 1259, the Mongol ruler Mongke Khan suddenly died while attacking the southern Song. So in the year 1260, his two younger brothers Kublai Khan and Arikbok fought a 4-year civil war for domination. So it finally Kublai Khan won. So this caused a division of the Mongol Empire. And then, because Kublai Khan appointed Han people to govern and promoted him as Han to be the law, so he displeased most of the Mongolian nobles. And then, by the year of 1271, Kublai Khan established the Yuan Dynasty in the North China, which coexisted with the southern Song Dynasty, just like what Miss Desiree reported a while ago, which is on 1127 to 1279 for the 8 years. So at that time, the Mongol Empire was divided into Yuan Dynasty, territory, and four other khanates in the Central and Western Asia. So next, please. Okay, so in Yuan Dynasty, there are several achievements that they ended because they ended more than 300 years division and also the unified China. So the unification made Yuan Dynasty economic prosperity and strengthened the process of the national integration. So many achievements were made especially in technology and culture. So let's now move on first to the technological achievement. So the highlight of this is the sushi calendar, which was invented or the years in 365.2425 days, just a 26 seconds off or the year's current measurement. So this was the longest used calendar without changes in China's history. So it had the same calculation for the Gregorian calendars, but it was first formulated in 1281 or 301 years earlier. So the next one is the cultural achievements. So Yuan drama and novels developed in this cultural achievement. So the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Water Margin. So this was the two of the four Chinese literature classics. So were written in this Yuan dynasty. So the next one is the government achievements. So in this government achievements, the Yuan dynasty adopted the what we call the provincial system. So this was developed in the Ming and Qing dynasties. And then they finally influenced the administrative system of the modern China. And then they set up this Yuan dynasty, 10 provinces throughout the country governed by the central authority. And then lastly is the overseas trade flourish. So shipping in the Yuan dynasty era was all well developed. So Guangzhou Fort, so along with the Alexandria in the country of Egypt at that time, was one of the world's two largest commercial ports. So this number of trading countries increases from 60 and the Song dynasty to more than 140 dynasties. So next, please. Okay, so the fall of the Yuan dynasty. What am I always saying Yuan? So during that period of the Kublai Khan to the third period of the Yuan emperor, so the Yuan dynasty was prosperous. So, however, dynasty after its failure in attempt to conquer the Japan, coupled with frequent regimes changes in the middle of the Yuan dynasty era. So this was followed by the economic decline and the present uprisings in the era, where the economy crumbled. Why? So in order to make the regime more stable, Yuan rulers constantly tried to launch wars and aggression against neighboring countries. And then this costly wars and great defeats were financed largely by the Yuan paper money. And to enforce it, their monetary control, they outwarded the loss of the use of gold and silver as the currency. And then the next one is the natural disaster. So famines and famines and natural disasters caused by political instability in the year from 1330s and onward. So these natural disasters such as epidemics, droughts, floods, and other natural disaster brought suffering to the peasants. So by the year 1341, the bubonic plague pandemic known as the Black Death. So Black Death, that was the epidemic that spread throughout the Yuan dynasty. fall into Yuan Dynasty. So that epidemic revenge, the empire of millions of people died in Hebei province alone. So sa isang province lang siya. And then the next one, the last is the resistance of Han Zhong Yunzang. So Mongol rulers established a class structure of Genghis Khan clan at the top, so the Mongols next. So Muslims and other foreigners who were installed in official positions next, and Han people at the bottom. So in that phase, it faced an unequal treatment. So heavy taxes, famines, and other governments' incompetence and cruelty. So this was in 1351. So a rebellion started called the Red Turban Rebellion. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for that impressive presentation of information, Miss Sheila. Therefore, we have learned here in the Yuan Dynasty that it was the first foreign ruled dynasty in Chinese history to commandeer all of China. With no experience in the running of such a large and complex empire, the Mongols gradually adopted many Chinese cultural and bureaucratic models. Growing factionalism at court, corruption, and the horrors of natural disasters, however, led relatively shortly to rebellion and eventually dynastic collapse. And with that, thank you again, Miss Sheila. Let's move on to the third dynasty for today, which is all about the Ming Dynasty, to be presented with us with Miss Leona Christine de Mata. Miss Leona, what are the significant information that we need to take note here in this particular dynasty?
So thank you, Miss Jade. So Miss Sheila brought us back to Yuan Dynasty. Now, let me talk about its after regime, the Ming Dynasty. So the Ming Dynasty was established following the collapse of the Mongol rule of China, known as the Yuan Dynasty. And as Sheila said a while ago, the Yuan had been beset by famines, plagues, floods, widespread banditry, and peasant uprising. So the Mongol rulers also squabbled amongst themselves for power and failed to quash numerous rebellions, including that perpetrated by a group known as the Red Turban Movement, led by a peasant called Shu Yuanshang. So the Red Turban Movement, an offshoot of the radical Buddhist White Lotus Movement, and initially reacting against forced labor and government construction projects, was most active in northern China. And Shu took over their leadership in 1355 CE. So Shu also replaced the Red Turban's traditional policy aim of reinstating the old Song Dynasty, with his own personal ambitions to rule, and gained wider support by ditching the anti-Confucian policies which had alienated the educated classes. So alone amongst the many rebel leaders of the period, Shu understood that to establish a stable government, he needed administrators, not just warriors out for loot. So Shu Yuanzhang's first major coup had been the capture of Nanjing in 1356 CE, and he succeeded, and he defeated his two main rebel leaders and their armies. So when Han Lin-er died, who had claimed to be the rightful heir to the line of Song emperors, Shu was left the most powerful leader in China, and he declared himself emperor in January 1368 CE. So Shu Yuanzhang overthrew the Yuan and established a dynasty he named Daming, or Great Brightness, with his reign name, Emperor Hongwu, meaning abundantly marital. So the Hongwu Emperor reigned until 1398 CE, and his successors continued his efforts to unify China through a strong centralized government and to consolidate the Ming dynasty's grip on power. So Emperor Yongle, the second son of Hongwu, who had taken the throne after a 3-year civil war, moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing in 1421 CE to be better placed to deal with any foreign threat. So at huge expense, Beijing was enlarged and surrounded by a 10-meter high circuit wall, measuring some 15 kilometers in total length. So another one is that the Great Wall of China was also repaired to better defend the northern frontier. Maintenance of the Great Wall of China was not consistent throughout the history of China, and by the time of the Ming Dynasty, it required significant repair work. So the Mongols were a constant threat to the citizens of the Ming Dynasty, and the Great Wall was believed to be the most effective defense against invasion. So next slide, please. So in 16th century CE, the stability of the Ming regime and agricultural reforms allowed significant economic growth and an increase in international trade. So the emperors were initially a little old-fashioned in their trade policies, insisting that certain countries only use ports at certain times. But eventually, these rules were relaxed and East Asia became a melting pot of trading neighbors, as well as attracting the Spanish, Dutch, and Portuguese. And vast quantities of silver in particular came into China via Manila from European-controlled Peru and Mexico. So over the course of the dynasties' reign, the population of China would rise from 60 to 80 million to 150 to 200 million. So as urban centers grew, so women amongst the wealthier classes began to enjoy more freedom from than previously. So they were able to own businesses in their own right, trade as merchants, and make an independent living as an artist or dancer. In terms naman of religion, Neo-Confucianism continued to dominate in Ming China as it had under the Song Dynasty. So next slide, please. One of the lasting contributions to Chinese history made by the Ming emperors was the building of the Forbidden City in Beijing, known in Chinese as Xijincheng, or the Purple Forbidden City, and begun by the Yongle Emperor from 1407 CE. So the complex was built as the imperial residence, and the buildings were made of painted red wood and yellow ceramic roof tiles and surrounded by a high wall. So the Forbidden City also included government offices, all arranged strictly according to the rank of imperial officials. So needless to say, the forbidden aspect derives from the controlled access to it, with only officials of certain ranks and invited and ambassadors being permitted within its walls. So today, the complex contains the largest collection of imperial treasures and artworks in China. So the period of Emperor Yongle and Emperor Xuande was the golden age of blue and white porcelain. So it is created by grinding China stone, mixing it with China clay, and then baking until translucent. And the technique was developed during the Tang Dynasty but perfected in the Ming era. And an imperial porcelain factory was created in Jingdishan in 1368 to produce wares for the imperial court. So though various colors might be featured on a piece, the produced wares of the though various color might be featured on a piece, so the classic Ming porcelain was white and blue. So the Jingdishan factory became the source of the porcelain exports that were extremely popular in Europe, which hoped to replicate the form. So next slide, please. Okay. So there were several developments in Chinese literature in Ming China. Thanks to better printing presses, more books were printed than ever before. So volumes were illustrated using woodblock prints to make them more attractive, and literature was itself made more accessible by being written in the vernacular language. So there were books on how to live a good life, handbooks of etiquette, commentaries on classic texts, military treatises, notes for exam preparation, collections of woodblock prints, anthologies of poems, erotic works, and of course, fiction. So some of the famous novels written in the vernacular during the Ming Dynasty are Shui Hu Zhuan, which is about a group of well-meaning bandits; Shi Yu Ji, about a priest who journeys to India to collect Buddhist scriptures; and Jin Ping Mei, a risky satire of Ming government examining the life of a wealthy merchant. So the Romans of the Three Kingdoms are also called the Sanggunianye, written in the 14th or 15th century CE, and often attributed to Lu Guanzhong, remains to this day one of the most popular of all Chinese novels, with its fantastic tales interwoven with historical figures during the fall of the Han Dynasty and the beginning of the Three Kingdoms periods. So scripts of the plays which traveling troops performed were another popular source of reading. So one of the most popular of all plays was the Peony Pavilion by Tang Xuanzu, Zhenzhou, written in 1598 CE. It tells the story of a young woman who falls in love with a young man she only meets in dreams. So the girl dies of loneliness and buries a portrait of herself in her garden, and the young man of the dream buys the house and finds the portrait, falls in love, and brings the girls back to life through the strength of his affections. Wow. So the Yongle Dadian was created during the reign of Emperor Yongle. So a massive encyclopedia of all important Chinese literary works. So it takes up over 22,000 chapters. It was too large to be printed, and unfortunately, most of the original was lost in the strife at the end of Ming Dynasty. And the copy of it is and that of a copy in a fire during Boxer Rebellion. I'm sorry. Around 800 chapters of the encyclopedia do still exist in various libraries outside of China. So next slide, please. Okay. So everything comes to an end. Corruption was rampant in the late Ming Dynasty. So the powerful seized the peasants' land and used their privileges to avoid paying taxes to the state. Heavy taxes were then imposed on the peasants. So crop failures caused by unseasonably cold weather lead to a famine. So the government could not solve the poverty problems and continued to oppress the people. And peasant soldier, namely Si Cheng, mutinied and led a rebellion. So the Ming Dynasty was not only embattled by the rebel army, but also suffered from constant threats of invasion by the Manchu army. So in 1644, Li Zicheng's troops attacked the Forbidden City, and the last Ming emperor hanged himself on a tree, and the Ming Dynasty fell. But the rebel troops didn't enjoy this victory. The Manchus seized their opportunity and breached the Great Wall, defeated Li Zicheng, and conquered Beijing. So later that year, the semi-nomadic Manchu people prevailed over the chaos and became the ruling Qing Dynasty. So, okay, I hope I give you enough information about the Ming Dynasty. So, thank you so much, Miss Jade.
Yes, thank you so much for a very detailed elucidation of ideas, Miss Leona Christine de Mata. So here in the Ming Dynasty, we have known that it was ruled China from 1368 to 1644 CE and replaced the Mongol Yuan Dynasty, which had been in the place since the 13th century CE. Despite challenges from abroad and within, the dynasty oversaw an unprecedented growth in China's population and general economic prosperity. Notable achievements of Ming China included the construction of the Forbidden City, the imperial residence in Beijing, a blossoming of literature and the arts, and the production of the timeless blue and white Ming porcelains. Eventually, though, the same old problems that had beset previous regimes bedeviled the Ming emperor's court factions, corruption, invasion, and poverty, which fueled rebellions. As a consequence, the economically and politically impoverished Ming could not resist the invasion of the Manchus, who established the Qing Dynasty from 1644 CE. And now, once again, thank you so much for that detailed presentation, Miss Leona. Now let's move on to the final dynasty that we are going to discover today, which is about the Qing Dynasty, which will be discussed to us by Miss Angeline Pastoral. Miss Angeline, can you tell us who are the emperors that we need to know and what are the achievements here in the Qing Dynasty?
Okay, so thank you, Jade, for the introduction. So for the Qing Dynasty established in 1644, the Qing army attacked and occupied Beijing, and the Ming Dynasty collapsed. And the Qing Dynasty unified the country under the new ruler. So Huang Taiji's son, Emperor Shunqi, became the first emperor of the Qing Dynasty. So the Qing Dynasty are also called Manchu Dynasty and it was the last imperial dynasties of China, spanning from 1644 to 1911 or 1912. It was about 268 years, and this period was marked by initial prosperity and turbulent last years. So as well as the fact that it was just the second time in China that it was not ruled by the Han people. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this dynasty, we have this what we call the hairstyle massacre. So from here, since the antiquity of Ming Dynasty, that was their hairstyle, and the Qing Dynasty wanted that every Han man or Han people change their hairstyle into this one. So from the massacre, hairstyle massacre, they also many Han intellectuals were hunted up and killed for attempting to protest the rulers through writing. And that is why some of the books are being prohibited in that era. Next slide, please. In the Qing Dynasty, we have what we call the Kangtian flourishing age, and it is the golden era of the Qing Dynasty. The Qing golden era was made up of the reigns of 3 emperors. So these are the 3 emperors that contributed most of those reign of the dynasty. Emperor Kangxi reigns in 1661 to 1722, and Emperor Yongzheng and Emperor Qianlong, who ruled the China in 1735 to 1796. So let us talk about Emperor Kangxi. Next slide, please. Emperor Kangxi happens to be the longest reign of Chinese emperor. He ruled China for about 61 years, from 1662 until 1722. He oversaw a number of cultural milestones, including the compilation of dictionary that is widely regarded as the best standardization of Han language. So this dictionary contains a lot of Chinese character during that time. And then Kangxi also dealt with military threats, putting down 3 Han uprising and capturing Taiwan. Kangxi also put an end to Tsarist Russia invasion attempts. And during Kangxi reigns, he also let the America to import some product like the potatoes, corns, and other root crops. And they start to export such as particularly the cotton, silk, and pottery. So the next emperor is Emperor Yongzheng. Emperor Yongzheng or Shenzhen was not initially in line of the throne, as he is the 4th son of Emperor Kangxi. But because of his greediness, and when the designated crown prince became mentally ill, the future emperor saw an opportunity to capture the throne, began and plotting. Here's a tea. According to some historian, Emperor Yongzheng plotted execution or plotted against his brothers, and also he plans to assassinate his brother. So in that case, when Emperor Kangxi died, immediately Emperor Yongzheng became the emperor because of the help of the military, or because of the support of the military in Beijing. Also, Yongzheng continued the plans and the works of his father, Emperor Kangxi. Next slide, please. And here's the next emperor, Emperor Shanlong. Emperor Shanlong rose the throne in 1735 and ruled China for over 60 years. Shanlong was not a dynamic ruler, and his final was remarked by his personal disinterest in rule. Shanlong was primarily interested in creative endeavors. Despite his lack of talent, he published 42,000 poems, and it is attached to the pottery or pieces of antique artwork throughout the palace. Shanlong was likewise interested in maintaining Manchu culture and established dictionaries and to achieve this goal, he also claimed that sorcerers were targeting Manchurians and devised a torture system to combat this, as well as a program to burn thousands of Chinese publications that were disparaging of Manchurians in any way. Next slide, please. So here is the achievement of Qing Dynasty or the Qing Dynasty. They expanded their territory from growing their population from 150 million to 450 million. And A Dream in Red Mansion was written. This novel is being published up until now. And then Peking Opera was born, or what we call now Beijing Opera. And the Kangxi Dictionary was completed and published, which recorded the largest numbers of Chinese characters in imperial times. Blue and white porcelain reached its artistic peak, especially that produced in the Kangxi period, which is preferred by many collectors. And the Imperial University of Peking and Tsinghua College were founded, and which are the predecessors of China top two universities, Peking University and Tsinghua University. It is now known as Beijing University and Tsinghua University. And as for the fall of Qing Dynasty, in 1911, the fall of the dynasty happens. It is the product of the revolution that started since 1894. So ever since the fall of the Qing Dynasty, there's no another form of imperial dynasty that ruled in China. So that's all for my for the Qing Dynasty. I hope that everyone got another information or gathered knowledge regarding the dynasty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that wonderful lecture, Miss Angeline Pastoral, as well as for the tea for the one of the emperors. And now, to wrap it all up, the Qing Dynasty, which is also called the Manchu or Manzu Dynasty, was the last dynasty of China. Three emperors were similarly emphasized, who are Emperor Kangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong, in which each of them has different strengths and weaknesses in their particular period of influence. Multiple achievements are likewise described that includes the expansion of territory along with the rise of literature. Lastly, during this time, certain infrastructures were also established that are mainly universities or schools. And that's it. Thank you so much for staying with us, our talk take mates, and till next time. And I would also like to give my deepest appreciation and gratitude to our guest speakers who tackled several dynasties in today's video, which are the Song Dynasty, Yuan Dynasty, Ming Dynasty, and Qing Dynasty. Once again, thank you so much to Miss Aceldo, Miss Casipe, Miss Demata, and Miss Pastoral. See you next time. Bye!